This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Questions orales, oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we now learn there are about 40 Liberal MPs that believe that this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, and corruption. But there's this strange rule in the Liberal caucus that you need to have permission from the Prime Minister to speak at the microphone. So a Liberal MP wanted to get up and say quadrupling the carbon tax is a bad idea, or doubling housing costs is making people homeless. They can't do it. Will the Prime Minister lift the gag so his Liberal MPs can say to his face that he's not worth the crime, the cost, and the corruption?
Once again, in English, none of these questions have to deal with the administration of government, but I see the order. I see that the Prime Minister is rising to his feet. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that the Conservative leader is confusing rules that apply within his Conservative caucus to rules that we have in the Liberal Party. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, we see at which point the Conservative leader is simply focused on playing politics and gaining power. That's why he wants to talk about things that are not having to do with delivering for Canadians. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that close to 1 million Canadians will be receiving dental care because of our Canadian dental program that he says doesn't even exist and that he's voted against every step of the way.
May I ask the honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot to please not take the microphone when the speaker is up on his feet or when other speakers who have been recognized by the speaker is taking the floor. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to have to bring up this terrible rule. It's just that Liberal backbench MPs are coming and talking to all of us to say that they're not allowed to speak to him. And they're wondering if I could perhaps pose some questions on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, I guess they can't get anywhere with the current Prime Minister, so they'd rather talk to the future common sense Conservative. Instead of silencing his own MPs, will he let them get up to the mic tomorrow to tell him that he's not worth the cost, crime, and corruption?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is he can't administer the government because he's too busy fighting for his job after 9 years. Even if his MPs know it. He broke immigration, he doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled crime, doubled the cost of living in a home. He wants to quadruple the carbon tax that's already forced 2 million people to a food bank, 1 in 4 kids to hunger, 25% of Canadians to poverty. Canadian food prices up 36% faster than in the States. StatsCan says we have the biggest gap between rich and poor in our recorded history. His MPs know that he's broke the country. Will they call a carbon tax election so we can fix it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, like all of us in this House, know that Canadians are facing challenging times. His solution, however, is to offer them cuts, is to offer them no programs that they can rely on, and to vote against things like dental care and pharmacare and investments in a green economy that is going to create jobs and careers long into the future. He wants to harm Canadians where we're focusing on delivering for them. He wants cuts to programs and services while we're busy investing in Canadians and their futures. That's the choice Canadians get to make.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, taxes up, costs up, crimes up, time's up. The Parliamentary Budgeting Officer confirmed what Canadians already know. This incompetent finance minister can't do math. She's going to blow through her own deficit this year by $7 billion. Wow. That's higher taxes and lower standards of living. 1 in 4 Canadians are already skipping meals, and this Liberal-made misery is only going to get worse. Why not call a carbon tax election now so Conservatives can fix the budget?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I am so glad to hear the Conservatives talk about the PBO, because just a few weeks ago, the PBO did a report on the sustainability of the federal finances. And I'm going to quote what the PBO said. Quote, "Current fiscal policy at the federal level is sustainable over the long term. In fact, according to the PBO, the federal government could even, quote, permanently increase spending by 1.5% of GDP. The only fiscal threat to Canada is Conservatives, who would cut health care, child care, national school fees."
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
That PhD in wackonomics has no clue. This incompetent finance minister, not knowing how to do math,
Colleagues, try to encourage as much freedom as possible in terms of the way people express themselves here. I'm going to ask honourable members. To, as much as possible, refrain from using language which is directed at a particular member and is considered insulting to those members. So I'm going to encourage all members, and I've spoken about this in a previous ruling. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn to start his question again, but to rephrase his question so that he doesn't use that kind of language.
that sounds like Liberal wackonomics. And this incompetent finance minister, not knowing how to do math, ensured 50% of Canadians can't afford basic necessities like food. She'll give cushy contracts to rich Liberal insiders while telling the 2 million Canadians she sent into a food bank they can solve their Liberal-made misery by cancelling their Disney+. She knows higher deficits lead to higher taxes and lower standards of living. She just doesn't care. Why not call a carbon tax election now so Canadians can fire these economic arsonists?
I'm going to come back to members on this matter, but I'm going to encourage all members.
Nobody pays to see the referee.
I'm going to encourage all members to please keep their counsel when they're not recognized by the chair. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for your remonstrations, but I have to tell you, speaking for myself, puerile playground insults from the maple syrup mega don't bother me one bit.
Yes.
As I mentioned, order. Order. This is precisely the reason why we should be very mindful of our language, because the things will be said on all sides which is going to be disturbing to the order of the House. I'm going to come back to this matter, and I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to start her question again without using those words. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can handle it. But what makes me really mad, what I can't handle, is seeing crocodile tears from these Conservatives. The only time they care, notice vulnerable Canadians, is for a partisan photo op. And we know they don't care because they are opposed to a national school food program that is feeding 400,000 Canadian kids. They're opposed to dental care that is helping 1 million. We care about Canadians, they just care about themselves.
The honourable member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs up, crimes up, and you know what? Time is up. This costly NDP Liberal coalition has doubled the cost of housing, and the majority of Canadians are unable to keep up with their grocery needs. Canadians have had enough. But the NDP Liberal coalition only wants to drive up costs by quadrupling their carbon tax. Will the Prime Minister finally call a carbon tax election so Conservatives can offer Canadians some relief?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, under the Conservative leader, slogans are up, rhymes are up, and parroting talking points so you get a shiny gold star and caucus seems to be up. I cannot imagine diminishing myself when I have the opportunity to represent my community in the House to cheapen the arguments that we can put forward on the floor of the House of Commons. If they care about helping people, why don't they actually support the policies that help build homes for people who can't afford them? Why don't they actually help advance policies that let families put food on the table, whether that is childcare, a middle-class tax cut, or the Canada Child Benefit? Every time we put measures forward to help Canadians, they vote against it and stand up with this nonsense.
The honourable member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you the Canadians that are lined up at food banks aren't buying their pathetic rhetoric. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has already confirmed once again that the carbon tax is costing Canadians more than they receive in rebates. And for families in Saskatchewan, the quadrupled carbon tax is $2,000. Will the Prime Minister finally give Canadians the carbon tax election that they so desperately need?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me provide a few facts to the honourable member. Fact, the PBO confirmed that the vast majority of Canadians get more money back than they pay. Fact, over 300 economists say carbon pricing is the best way to reduce emissions that is best for the economy. Fact, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said her family gets more money back with the carbon rebate. Fact, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said he looked at all alternatives to the carbon price and they were all too expensive. We are reducing emissions while we are addressing affordability. On that side of the House, they have no plan to address climate change. They are actively denying the reality of climate change. They have no plan for the economy. Shame on you.
The honourable member from Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs up, crimes up, and time is up. The Prime Minister's own Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed yet again that the carbon tax costs more to Canadians than they get back in rebates. When the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax, families in Alberta will pay nearly $2,000 more in carbon taxes. Will the NDP Liberals finally admit their tax is simply a scheme and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Economic
Mr.
Development.
Speaker, at the risk of correcting my honourable colleague from the other side, let me state very clearly, the PBO has indicated that 8 out of 10 Albertans get more money back from the Canada Carbon Rebate than they pay in carbon tax. And Mr. Speaker, but you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of Premier Danielle Smith, who said that not only did she get more money back because she lives in rural Alberta, she even got the 20% top up. Sorry, my colleague, that's the fact.
I ask the honourable member from Miramichi Grand Lake not to take the floor unless he's recognised. The honourable member from Battleford's Lloydminster. Excuse me, from Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians lined up at food banks really aren't buying that rhetoric. I'm sorry. Food bank usage is also up. Cold Lake Food Bank is the busiest it's ever been, with a 28% increase in usage over 2023, which itself saw an increase of 16% over 2022. The carbon tax is driving up the cost of groceries, gas, and heating, making things more difficult for families and food banks that are pushed to their limit. So the question's simple. Will the Prime Minister admit his carbon tax isn't working and call a carbon tax election?
Wonder what the other Randy thinks.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Speaker, the numbers are in and the checks have already arrived. And in Alberta, a family of 4 gets $2,500 per year, which is more than they spend on the price on pollution, which is something the other side doesn't understand because, Mr. Speaker, they don't care if the planet burns. And, Mr. Speaker, let's go one step further. Why did that side vote against the Canada Child Benefit that gives $7,800 per kid in Alberta? Why did they vote against childcare? Why did they vote against support for workers? They care about themselves, not about Canadians. We're on the side of Canadians each and every day.
The Honourable Member from Regina Leuven.
That much hot air could run a couple windmills, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs up, crime is up, and time is up. The Parliamentary Budget Officer once again confirmed that Canadians pay much more and cost more than they get back in rebates. In Saskatchewan, after these guys quadruple the carbon tax, it's going to cost a family $2,000. That's $2,000 a year, Mr. Speaker. My question is, when will these Liberals call carbon tax elections so Canadians can have their say at the ballot box?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, it's really difficult to take any of this rhetoric seriously. When I was first elected 9 years ago, that party used to send checks to millionaires to help them with the cost of raising their families. That presented 2 questions. Millionaires would ask me in my riding, why am I getting this money? And people of lower income would ask me in my riding, why is it getting taxed back? What we did is we created a Canada Child Benefit that is tax-free and means tested. What we've also done is establish a national school food program. If you're really serious about addressing child poverty and family poverty, why don't you get on board?
After 9 years, NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. And you know what else is up? Liberal cover-ups. The Speaker ruled the NDP Liberals violated the order to turn Green Slush Fund $400 million scandal documents over for criminal investigation. The Liberal obstruction of justice continues, with 19 government departments censoring departments and 2 agencies refusing to turn the documents over. So will the Prime Minister just end the Liberal corruption cover-up and turn the uncensored documents over now?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Speaker, that member gets up every day and says things that are simply not true. But what he won't answer, Mr. Speaker, is why his leader is refusing to get a security clearance. Mr. Speaker, that's the real question on every Canadian's mind right now. When we are facing a time when we have to put country first, stand up for Canadians, the leader of the opposition is hiding something from Canadians. The question is, what is it, and why is it stopping him from getting his security clearance?
The Honourable Member from South Shore St. Margaret's.
Well, the Prime Minister could release the 11 names, but he can also release the documents uncensored so Canadians can learn the truth about the $400 million Liberal Green Slush Fund cover-up. Canadians, I'm sure, will also be shocked to learn that on the Prime Minister's order, the more than 10,000 censored pages cover up the most important information about the Prime Minister's hand-picked Liberal appointees to the Green Slush Fund. The government does not exist to protect corrupt Liberals from criminal investigation. So will the Prime Minister just stop his cover-up of Liberal corruption and hand the uncensored documents over now?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Speaker, Canadians expect police to follow due process, and let me be perfectly clear that the government obviously complies with anything that follows due process. But what Canadians also expect is that their leaders are going to act in the best interest of Canadians. That's right. Not to protect They're partisan interests, Mr. Speaker. Why is that member and all members of the Conservative Party covering up for the leader of the opposition who's refusing to get his security clearance, Mr. Speaker? It's easy. All the other members have done it. When will the leader of the opposition?
For the second time, I'm going to ask the honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot today to please not take the floor when he is not recognised. I will not like to do this a third time. The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. Mr. Speaker, you ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order regarding a criminal investigation into the latest $400 million scandal. The government's refusal to respect your ruling has paralysed Parliament. The Auditor General found that Liberal appointees at SDTC gave millions to Liberal insiders with over 186 conflicts of interest. Mr. Speaker, will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up and comply with your lawful order so we can get accountability for corruption and Parliament can get back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the House of Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I expect my honourable colleagues on the other side to at least be honest with the facts. What you said was that this was highly unusual, this motion, and it should be referred to committee for study. We support that. It's only the Conservatives that are obstructing their own obstruction. But, Mr. Speaker, this is unsurprising because they're also trying to cover up their own leader's refusal to get his security clearance. Mr. Speaker, all of the other leaders of the political parties in this House have done that. Canadians want to know why. What is he hiding and what is he trying to protect? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.